Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of big data. Today, my guest is from New Vantage Partners. We have Paul Barth. So, Paul, welcome to the show today.
Thanks very much, Rich.
So, Paul, we hear a lot about big data, but not so much about how maybe like the Fortune 100 kind of companies could use it to run their business or make better decisions. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, Rich. We've been working with Fortune 100 companies for over a decade now and helping them try to leverage the information assets they have and turn the data into information, into insights, and ultimately action. And over the years, we've collected some insights that help them improve access to this information. The latest trend seems to be big data, which is, I think, technology-led right now, but it has some capabilities that I think are going to be pretty transformative if companies can apply it in the right way. So we've been looking at what the businesses are looking for and prepared a short presentation about that.
Well, terrific. I've brought your slides up. Why don't we start with that?
Great. So one of the things that when we talk to businesses, large businesses about information, is that their frustration is not necessarily around how to get better answers or to get more data involved when they're talking about big data. They want to get answers faster. So one of the things that we've developed is a new metric that is helping companies assess how long it takes to get an answer, the time to answer, and understanding what the impact of that is on their business. And so in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about this metric, some of the drivers and pain points behind it, and where we think companies that are being successful in this space are going. So in this slide, it just gives a quick overview of the whole talk. The first is to emphasize the point that businesses ultimately don't want data. They don't want data warehouses. They want answers. They build these artifacts so they can get answers. And furthermore, what we hear is a common pain point and also a huge opportunity is how long it takes to get an answer. And so this metric, TTA, time to answer, is critical to the value of the data and the analyses that you're going to perform. So when we look at big data and we look at how to plan and integrate new technologies and capabilities, we're interested in not only how to get those answers faster, but what it means to the business. One thing to mention is that faster iteration produces better answers. So it's not that you want to do one study or one analysis and get an answer. It's that an answer usually begets another question in large businesses. And even when you get an answer the first time, you may need to iterate to refine it, to get more complete understanding, or to get an up-to-date set of data. And so we tend to be focusing on big questions rather than big data when we look at this space. Now, when you're going to answer a question, we really advise that you look hard at where your time is spent and what the effort is, especially the effort that's not really adding a lot of value. And what we have found literally over the course of 2 decades is that the pain point still is data preparation, that it's not having data, it's having data that is ready for analysis. And so those steps, and I'm going to talk through a case study of that, are really where I think big data can play a very important role, some new technologies and new approaches, and yet we need to think about it in terms of an overall ecosystem so that when your first analysis is done, you've actually set the table to accelerate time to answer going forward. And 2 terms we look at in this, and one dichotomy we look at here in how you architect your business processes and technology is to build a symbiotic system that supports new analyses and known information and analytics. And I'll give some examples of that. To start, we define the time to answer by the steps involved going from question to answer, which we have listed on the right-hand side. They start with clarifying your question and the type of answer that's needed, including maybe how accurate that information is needed. Then you have to identify the data required and the analysis approach that you'll use. Next, you have to source the data, if it's internal data for your company, if it's external. You need to bring it together to prepare it for analysis. And then once you have that data, it usually needs a significant amount of cleansing, normalizing, and integration to make it ready for analysis. So if you're studying customers and you're linking it to service calls or you're linking it to sales, you need to make sure that you can match the customers with those activities, as an example. Once you've got this clean data set, you analyze the data, you validate the results, and you apply the answer. Now, of course, this looks like a sequential process, but in fact, you iterate many times and you discover things in each of these steps as you are trying to get on your quest from question to answer. On the left-hand side, one of the things I'm emphasizing is that time to answer varies based on the types of the use of the data. That is, we may start with some basic metrics, but we also might need real-time assessments of a situation. We've talked to the Pentagon about that type of thing. Or we might want to be looking at complex historical analyses. In one case, we work with a large financial services company who in 2008 wanted to know what market and customer behavior was like in the previous recession, and that required years and years of history to be able to do that. Furthermore, the time it takes to get an answer is critical to its value and utility. So if you need some information to make a decision in the next week, it's no good if it takes a month to get the answer. Similarly, if you're trying to make some recommendations during a phone call or a web session, you need sub-second response time and information at the fingertips of the person on the phone or used by the internet site. What we have found over years of working in this space is that complex organizations with over 1,000 or even 10,000 people, often have a very high TTA, time to answer, for very important processes and situations. And especially when they are looking at a strategic decision, such as acquiring another business, merging or reorganizing their staff or their go-to-market strategy, oftentimes the data is not in a ready-to-analyze state, and it takes them months and months to understand the opportunity. And so we find a particular pain point with large companies who have good IT staffs and good data sources that these companies struggle when they're going into the market with a new analysis. And the third thing we found is that solving this is not business as usual. This isn't just buying a new technology that will run faster, better speeds and feeds, better capacity, going to the cloud. In fact, you really need to rethink the way you do analytics and how it fits in your overall ecosystem to solve this problem and to leverage these new technologies. To illustrate these points, I'm going to go through a case study of a large financial services firm that we worked with who had a data and analytics issue with time to answer in their marketing department. They would develop very accurate and predictive direct marketing campaigns that would allow them to go to market and save a lot of money and increase their response rates by targeting with these predictive and analytical models using a lot of behavioral data who to market to. But what they were frustrated with is that every time they launched one of these, it took about 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months, from soup to nuts, start to finish, from the time a marketer said, I want to target this population with an offer for this product in this time frame, the end-to-end process of the list of mailings to go out the door would take 2 to 3 months. And the process in there was defining the target, identifying, sourcing, cleansing, and integrating new and existing data, building and validating predictive models, and then applying those models to select the target list of customers. And the chart at the bottom illustrates the steps in the process. The 7 steps from question to answer are listed on the left-hand side, and where there is a dark grid, that is where an analyst or another team member is spending their time during the timeline of the 32 business days across the top. So we see that we start in the beginning, just a couple of days to clarify the question, understand what the opportunity is, and then identify, gee, for this kind of campaign, we're going to need some external data. Maybe we're going to do co-marketing with a partner, and we need some lists from them. But we can identify that we'll be bringing together different kinds of behavioral data that we may already have. And in the picture on the top right corner, you see that they're working on a platform that's drawing data from their data warehouse, maybe bringing in some operational data, and maybe bringing in some of this external new data. And that's the sourcing process. They're going and running these feeds and moving along for several days, getting their data sets together on this analytics platform. But something interesting happens in day 7. As they've been going to get to the source of the data, there was a question about, gee, do you mean this subset of customers, or do you mean this other one? Because the data is organized a little differently than the original assumption is. So you go back to the business stakeholder, you get that clarification, you go back to sourcing it, and you're spending several work days pulling data sets together. And in day 10, you see the first step in there is to start cleansing the data. And in cleansing, what you're doing is looking to see if the values line up, if the keys between the different records can be matched so you get a complete picture of the customers that you're marketing to. And also where there's missing or incorrect data, there's data profiling technology and tools that can give you that information. And what you see is there was a quick touch on day 10 to cleanse it, and we went right back up to identify to see. At that point, the next day we had to say, gee, I don't know if that data set that you gave us is correct. There looks like some errors in the data. Can you resend it? So that's that back and forth of touching the data, going back, making sure you've got the right data sets and sourcing it. And in day 13, you see that, okay, in fact, we do have a pretty good data set of all the data we think we want, and let's go through and do some cleansing and cleanup. And this is where you're building all sorts of variables and summarizing customer behaviors that would be useful in predicting people who would be likely to respond to this campaign. And in day 17, you actually have an analysis-ready data set. You go in and run your first analysis. It could be some simple statistics or a complex regression routine. And boom, you see this same blip where you go back up to a sourcing step, because even though you've cleaned up the data, as soon as you've analyzed it, it's starting to give you some very unexpected output. And these advanced data mining tools are, in fact, unearthing and showing you that there's some bias in the data sets and some data that you actually need to go get another source of data and clean that up. And so you go get more data, you do some more cleansing, you do some more analysis, and lo and behold, that next analysis on day 21 shoots you right back up to where you start. And this is very typical. You'll be halfway through and you will discover something about your target market that really surprised you, and you want to check with management to make sure they really want to go and do this campaign. If there's a refinement or clarification, that those things need to be done. Those get resolved. You go back, you resource some of the data, you cleanse it again, you finalize your data set, you do your analysis and validation, and finally on day 32, you have the set ready to go out the door. So this is a very common pattern when doing analysis and developing a model from scratch that happens. And what is interesting is if you're a company that does this a lot of times and you have 10 or 50 or 100 people doing this in parallel, oftentimes what they're doing has a lot of overlap, and one person's cleaning up or finding a good source of data is not communicated to another. And furthermore, what we all know and we all have some frustration with is that identify, source, and cleanse is not what these statisticians and deep data experts have been trained. They've been trained in it, but that's not their value-added time. Their value-added time is starting with clean, ready-to-analyze data, and then developing these predictive models. So in this case study, what they wanted to understand was, is there a way of accelerating this process and doing things in a way so that we can get a faster time to answer? On slide 5, the big aha with this client was our understanding that 80% of the time, these analysts and marketers could use pre-existing data, pre-cleaned data, and pre-existing models for their targeting without losing a lot of fidelity or accuracy. And so instead of trying to build a one-size-fits-all system, they kept their custom analytics system that's depicted on the left for the way they used to do business, the 45-day process, et cetera. And in the middle, they developed what's called a ready-to-market database. And the difference is that the ready-to-market database had predefined models, predefined data, and it allowed you to do selection and scoring and more of a pick and choose for developing a campaign rather than something custom. And what they noticed is that they still needed, for 20% of the time, that flexible environment on the left that would allow for new data sources, new cleansing and integration that goes along with that, variable creation, et cetera, et cetera. Very powerful, sophisticated environment. But we also noted that these don't sit side by side not talking. In fact, the data warehouse and standard data sources are valuable to both of those environments, so they're linked. And that as the analytics platform on the left-hand side discovers new models and new data that are useful, that could be moved in an orderly fashion to this ready-to-market database. Furthermore, once they determined that they could do this 2 order of magnitude acceleration of time to answer by going from custom to custom and ready-to-market pre-organized solution, they took it the next step and said, well, we want to do some real-time recommendations so that when people call us or people come to our website, we know who they are, we know their context, and we have predefined a whole set of communications or offers that would be relevant and personalized to them. And so in this case, they were able to take the same approach and build a third environment for real-time profiling and interactions to recommend these with a self-learning adaptive model in the center. So what we have found in these cases is that we have 3 distinct domains of time to answer with different design points in an ecosystem where they share information. And in fact, the real-time system shares information going back to ready-to-market and to custom analytics. One of the ways to look at this ecosystem is this concept that on the left-hand side, we have designed something for new analyses, new insights, discovery, and exploration that's flexible but highly manual, driven by experts, and relatively slow in getting answers out, but very powerful. And on the right-hand side, we have taken advantage of the things that we've pre-digested and we know and structured and developed something that's specialized, automated, and fast, but not very flexible. This takes a lot of work to get it optimized or to get it to change it for new applications. And by looking at this as an ecosystem where we support both these new analyses and the known analyses, we can think about this as an ecosystem that improves over time. So this concept of the new new data exploration, new analytics, and known analytics and accelerated time to answer forms the basis for an architectural paradigm that is really complementary. And we feel like the 2 governing principles are that we want to enable the new. We want to make sure that the new analyses have access to all the known data that we've put together, master data, data warehouses, that we can easily go and query those systems and get that data. But we also have a secure workspace for working with external data without interrupting the operational systems. We have rapid profiling, quality, and data integration tools. We can introduce non-standard analytic routines, new software, new data structures, such as in the big data space. A lot of people are looking at graph algorithms. They're looking beyond the traditional predictive modeling techniques. And what we know helps here is in having all of that information and that capability together to accelerate their time to answer, we want powerful infrastructure and specialized tools. That's in contrast to governing the known. In the known, you want to have a lot of trust in what has been put in place. So cleansed, mastered, and pre-integrated analytic and operational data, common metrics, models, and BI capabilities, up-to-date business and technical metadata, and rigorous change management. This is not a cowboy environment. This is one where we obey standards, we focus on scale and high availability so that we know that resource is ready when we need to use it for getting our answers on known questions and known types of data. And the combination between the two is depicted in the arrows between the two domains on the bottom. We already talked about the new techniques and the new arena wanting to have access to all the known data and that good, clean, up-to-date data that's run in production. But the big stumbling block for a lot of companies is getting the promotion from a new information or a new insight into that production environment. And what we believe is the governance policies have to really make it clear and even facilitate the output of an analysis and an output of a discovery is new data specifications with metadata, documented cleansing and integration rules, and analytic routines that can be tested rigorously and moved up into a production environment. And what's interesting is that when that happens in a rigorous way, you offload the effort required to do that cleansing and that productionalization from the analytics environment. And in too many cases, we've seen a good analysis environment frozen because it has to run a whole bunch of production jobs. Or conversely, we've seen a production environment be taken down because there are too many ad hoc and unknown new types of analytics being run in that environment. So keeping them separate but coupled, we believe, is a key to success. When we look at this and we want to think about a process by which we look beyond just an architecture but to an overall set of business capabilities that allow us to continuously accelerate time to answer, we look at an ecosystem of core capabilities. And our ecosystem is called data, insight, and action. And the purpose of defining these is that you develop your data capabilities, such as being good at sourcing, quality, metadata, mastering, integration, et cetera, so that you have trusted, useful data that can enable insights, such as reporting and discovery capabilities. And those discoveries in a business process need to drive action through active, intelligent programs that interact with customers, that optimize supply chains, that have alerts, and furthermore, that exchange information throughout the process, that really instrument the interactions with all of your different business processes and constituents. So the output of a data exchange is more data, which, if you have a good, healthy data ecosystem, can absorb that and expand it. And this is really the fundamental key to a test and learn environment in which the information that you are producing and through your normal business processes is actually informing how well you're doing and is allowing you to build intelligence and analytics that improves those processes, improves the experience. And even today, we're seeing people coming out with information-based products based on their ability to capture and use their information in a very powerful way. On the next slide, we talk about the ROI model for this because it's very hard for many businesses to launch a product or launch an investment without a good understanding of the ROI. And when we think about the ROI model for these capabilities, because these will take years to develop, it's actually a network economics model. In a network economics model, the investments are ramp up and develop a core platform for the users. And the users, the value you get from this is comes over time. And where it comes over time is when multiple people are using these core capabilities, all contributing their data, all contributing and reusing the data that's there, much like a network in a social network, the more people participating, the higher value of the network. And so that enterprise value line starts low and over time grows because we're increasing the user base. But what we see with the capabilities investments is that instead of viewing it as a project where there's a big investment, then it goes down, we see that the capability investments flatten out over time and that you maintain these core capabilities and invest in them a bit every year, but because of increased automation and technology improvements over time, your costs go down, but the growing user base delivers more value. So when we look at this kind of graph, the principles that the business users we work with have been most interested in is, first, enterprise return on investment comes from leveraging core capabilities. That means, and that early adopters will not have positive ROI. So if you're going to build something that's significant and of enterprise utility, you cannot expect a quick ROI. And if you wait until you get a project like that, you're never going to get there. You're never going to start. And that's where we often see companies with pockets of capabilities, but never the leverage that you hope you can get. But when with clients we've worked with, and I'll show on the next slide, there will be positive returns if you adhere to some good principles, because the investments flatten and the onboarding of new users is leveraging the investments you've made. Next slide. On this slide, we take a real case study and show how the investments happened over years and how the value was returned. In year one of this company, they decided that they needed to really understand a new channel. In this case, it was the internet channel. And they wanted to understand the data, how people were using the channel, researching products, purchasing products online, and interacting with them. They had one channel. They had 5 terabytes of data, which is a lot because it's a very large institution. But they were able to build that out and have about 15 products in there. And at that time, their ability to bring on new information, say a new product into their analysis environment, took about 180 days. It was about half a year. However, over the time, they started to onboard more products, and by the third year, they had really been able to incorporate in this analytics repository and warehouse all their products, all their customers, and all their prospect data. And furthermore, by developing some methodology and improvements in technology, they've been able to cut their time to incorporate new information to 1/3 of its original speed, and to increase the capacity of the overall system by a factor of 10 at a constant investment rate. So this is a 5-year curve. Now, concurrent with this is, of course, the business value coming out of this. In the beginning, year one after the build, the first application coming out of this was called pipeline reporting, just understanding how prospects would come into this one channel and either convert or not into customers or through a series of interactions. However, once they had that information, the marketing team realized that they could do some campaign management off of that same data and start to use some of that information for triggering, and they could execute a 45-day kind of campaign management process similar to the one I showed earlier. By the end of the second year, they'd actually said, this is generally good reporting data. Let's get some reporting on it, make sure our management knows about it. And by the end of that year, they'd also had 3 other business units starting to reuse and adopt the information, the analytics, and the marketing capabilities in this system. Furthermore, they realized that many of their campaigns could be these one-day type of campaigns if they stuck to a limited set of data and a limited set of models. The next year, they added real-time recommendations, generating leads that were shipped across the business and were able to respond to internet activity in under 20 minutes with a phone call, and then continue to onboard other business units. And this consistency between a flat investment and significant measurable business value is a very good demonstration of how the network economics and capability of these investments work. And what we believe in this is that the success factors include incremental growth, that is, we start small with a vision towards getting bigger, steady delivery of business value, and ongoing adoption. That if you fail to get adoption, your value line is going to taper off just like the investment line, and you're not going to see that spread. And if you don't have a sustained support for this, If people evaluate you in year 2, they're going to see the value or return is under the investment. And they need to have that vision and that patience to be able to move forward. So to summarize, what we are seeing in the marketplace is this development of a whole new class of technologies which is more powerful, lower cost, and quicker to use through these emerging technologies that can dramatically reduce time to answer. In the data management space, we've seen the emergence of database appliances in which you can load and run a relational database with data in a day rather than with months and months of programming and preparation. We have seen accelerators for databases and for unstructured data. The Hadoop framework coming out of the online industry has also shown us that we can take many different types of programs of analytics programs and many types of very high volume data into the peta and exabytes and spread them over very inexpensive servers and run programs very quickly on a very large base. We're also seeing analytics and visualization tools such as Spotfire and some of the self-learning and genetic algorithms, machine learning capabilities that have been in the market for 5 or 6 years, but we're seeing a very big acceleration there. And what we're finding is that these tools are coupled with a high-performance, inexpensive platform are one way of accelerating your time to answer. But during discovery, we're still seeing time to answer dominated by data sourcing and preparation for analysis, profiling, linking. And what we're seeing is some improvement in the data preparation space, but I think that there will need to be more work done here for that to make a significant improvement. And with that as a baseline, what we're seeing is that as people are investing in big data, they should be thinking about their investments in a capabilities ecosystem for both new and known data, and that the ecosystem includes rigorous governance and adoption of the known data capabilities and agile analytics tools for new data, which is where we think the big data technology plays particularly well, coupled with a formal promotion process for getting your insights into production.
Well, thanks for that, Paul. A couple questions here. I'm curious about your customer engagements with companies that are as big as Fortune 100. Obviously they're doing some kind of business intelligence, but when they come to you, do they realize that there's gold there that they're not getting business or advantage from? I mean, what does that engagement look like?
Yeah, I would say that most of the time when we engage, our customers are telling us that they have processes that are too slow. They have latent information that it's difficult to get access to, but that would be very useful for them to come to market, and that they're seeing movement in the marketplace around these different capabilities and in their competitors, and it's a competitive necessity to have a great web experience, a great mobile experience, an integrated call center, web, mail, retail experience, one where the customers are very well known and the products are tailored or very relevant to what they want to do and what will relevant to them. And what we end up seeing is that big companies in particular struggle with this integration because they have built organizational structures that are very siloed. They're siloed by task, that's marketing, sales, service, fulfillment, et cetera. They're also siloed by product. So if you're a credit card company and you have 15 types of cards, you probably have 15 different managers for each of those lines of business who are all fighting for the customers. So getting that kind of consistency and linking is not a natural outcome of the way they do business. It's something they need help and careful planning. And in particular, if they're going to build common capabilities, those are shared, and they're going to be horizontal across different business units, and that's often a struggle for large companies.
And Paul, what impressed me about your talk was you weren't, diving down into the technology. It was focused on methodology, right? And I'm
Yes.
wondering who's in the room with you when you engaged, because I could see the IT guys kind of scratching their heads at those slides, like, well, that's not what we do, right? We serve up we serve up bytes and network
Yeah.
capacity, right? So, um, I mean, who is in the room? I mean, who do you have to bring together to make that sale?
Yeah, when we started New Vantage 11 years ago, I think one of the things we determined from the outset is that the reason some of these analytics and data opportunities don't work out, the projects fail, or they don't get the business value, is because the business and technology are not in the room together. So the first thing we do is bring them to the room together. And what's funny is we're half the time we're hired by IT because they are having trouble communicating with the business, and the other half we're hired by the business who doesn't understand why IT can't get answers faster. And in both cases, we need to do an education of what are our business processes, what are our core business decisions, and use that to drive technology choices and alternatives. And that we find the success rate when we do that is much higher than when we're working on either side separately. And believe it or not, the both senior management on both sides of the aisle are recognize this problem, and they want to solve it, but their organizational structures are usually in the way of a meaningful dialogue and investment, and that's where they would want to look for best practices from outside.
Well, great. Well, Paul, I guess kind of a wrap-up question here. Where do you see this going as these technologies like Hadoop mature, right? I mean, how will that better arm companies like New Vantage Partners to, deliver time to answer?
I think that the technologies need to get more mature and robust, especially in the kind of the Hadoop open source world. There are pockets of capabilities, but when people talk about a data scientist for big data, they include that they need to be a strong computer scientist. And I feel like that actually is an indication that the technology is not mature yet. It would be like asking a person in finance who's doing financial analytics that in addition to your CPA, you need to be a programmer. And you don't need to be a programmer in today's world. So I think there's going to be maturity there. And one of the things that's very attractive about these new technologies is as they stabilize and mature, they make the exploration and use of big data and complex analytics much less intimidating. There's a much lower hurdle rate to working with your data. And I think that's the most exciting thing, that we're going to move away from standardized reporting and back towards the modeling and analytics, and even before that, really facilitating exploration and new discoveries that will open new possibilities for large businesses.
Well, Paul Barth, I found this very fascinating, and I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Rich. I enjoyed it.
You bet, you bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of big data.